Hello and welcome into BTN's Take 10 podcast. This is Alex Roux of BTN. And before we get into the show, a word from our sponsor, Northwestern University's School of Professional Studies. If you've ever thought about a career in sports, check out the master's program in sports administration at Northwestern University. You can build your skill set and your network in evening or online classes. Find out more at sps.northwestern.edu/sports. All right, thanks as always to our sponsor. Like I said, if you're looking to get into the sports industry to break in, definitely check out that master's program in sports administration up the road at Northwestern. Definitely a great opportunity, so check it out if you're looking to work at a place like BTN or somewhere else within the industry. All right, let's get into our show now. Have a great guest lined up and a great segment following our guest as well. College basketball season ended a few weeks ago in Minneapolis, the Final Four, but for our guest this week, college basketball season never really ends. It's Jon Rothstein of CBS Sports and Sports Illustrated. And if you're a college basketball fan, chances are you've heard of Jon, or if you've scrolled Twitter, chances are you've seen Jon's tweets. He is a Twitter Hall of Famer in the college basketball world. He's one of the leading reporters in the college basketball space. He has many catchphrases that he likes to play over and over again, play the hits over and over again, as he says. And I'll try and think of one off the top of my head here. Death taxes Matt Painter is one example that we get into. He'll say it every time Purdue does something good. He used to say it about Wisconsin basketball as well. And he's also one of the most connected people in all of sports with head coaches and players and constantly breaking news, and carved out some time to come on the show in late April or early May if you're listening to this on May 1st or beyond. So it was good to get Jon on when he had some breathing room and time to hopefully decompress a bit after a long college basketball season. Many thanks to him for coming on, and we had a good 30-minute discussion on the college basketball offseason because, like I said, it doesn't really stop. We've got transfer market still in flux. We've got players weighing the decision whether to enter the NBA or remain in the NBA draft or come back to school. Plenty of Big Ten players are making that decision, and schedules have come out recently for next year. So there's a lot of college basketball news still floating out there, and definitely want to get Jon on for the first time. It's been a guest I've been targeting for a while. So good interview with Mr. Rothstein coming up, and after that we have a Call for the Culture segment with Colleen Degnan. Talk about the lighter side of sports and how it crosses over with entertainment, pop culture, social media. Definitely a fun segment. We'll talk Game of Thrones fatigue. We will talk NBA playoffs and anything and everything, really, where sports and pop culture intersect. So good stuff coming up with both interviews, so definitely stay tuned for both. Like I said, off the top, it's Jon Rothstein. 30 minutes coming up of college basketball talk, plus some insight into how Jon built his career and some discussion about his background in sports media. So, without any further delay, let's get to the interview with Jon Rothstein. It starts right now. Very pleased to be joined by Jon Rothstein. He's a college basketball insider for CBS Sports, Sports Illustrated, WFAN in New York City. He's also the host of the College Hoops Today podcast. Follow him on Twitter at Jon Rothstein, and that's Jon with no H. So, we'll talk about his famous Twitter game in just a little bit. But first off, Jon, how are you?
Great, Alex. Great to be with you.
Yeah, great to have you on. And we're taping this on the last day of April, the last day of a college basketball month in 2019 until November, if I'm not mistaken. So all season, Jon, you've been tweeting and saying, for all the hoop heads out there, that we sleep in May. How much rest are you going to get starting tomorrow?
That's a good question. I probably hadn't thought about that until you asked that question, but it definitely feels like it's a quieter time of year in terms of the news cycle in college basketball. The last high major job that was open on the coaching carousel was St. John's. That got wrapped up a little bit over a week ago, and now, we'll wait and see what happens over the next 4 weeks as to who comes back to school, who stays in the NBA draft, and then moving forward, we should have some really good clarity as to what next season will look like in the Big Ten and beyond.
Yeah, I was going to say, for all the sleep in May talk, I was going to ask if your months of May are different now with the new draft rules, players being able to hire agents and get the feedback, come back to school, and also just the transfers as well that we have to keep an eye on. So does May 2019 look different than, say, like May 2010 for you?
I think one thing that we've learned is that, in certain cases, obviously transfers are going to have, a significant impact on a team the next season. A lot of times they're plugging holes. We've seen certain instances where transfers made a big impact on a team. And I think, you look obviously a couple years ago in the Big Ten, Purdue was able to get a player out of Colorado State named Jon Rothstein, who really did a nice job for them on a team that went to the NCAA tournament. In the Big 12, DeAndre Kane, who led Iowa State to the Sweet 16 in 2014, was probably pound for pound, inch for inch, the best grad transfer we've seen. So there's a lot of activity on the transfer market. I think some are more influential than others, but that obviously combined with waiting to see who's going to come back to school after going through the NBA draft process makes it an interesting month and a fun month in terms of prognosticating. I'm always somebody who loves thinking about lineups and how many bids can a certain conference get the next season. So that always adds to the fun when you're thinking about off-season banter.
Yeah, I'm going to bring up some specific names here in just a second, but first I'm curious what you do now that this is a down period, like you said. Do you get any free time? Do you go around to campuses this time of year? What are you up to just in this portion of the college basketball offseason?
Well, I think, you obviously are keeping tabs on what you're aiming to do from obviously a news perspective. There's different stories and so on and so forth that you're trying to follow every day, and that doesn't really change. Even if we get into July and August, I think you're always monitoring certain things. That includes, obviously, the NBA draft stuff and the transfer stuff that you talk about. This May is a little bit different because I'm moving, so that's almost like a second job on top of itself. So I'm preparing for that. I'm not going very far, but that's obviously almost like a full-time job when you think about all the stuff. And then I'm going to go away in a couple of weeks for a little R&R. I never really stop working, even if I'm in a different location. I will incorporate some college basketball into that trip, but those things are providing a little bit of bounce this time of year in one of the quieter months.
I was going to say, you don't put your phone down or anything during vacation. Do you just stay on at all times, or do you ever allow yourself to unplug?
I'm the kind of person who's afraid to go into the shower because I'm going to miss something. So my phone's always with me. I usually, apologize in advance to the people I'm with and so on and so forth. But, my phone's always with me, that's for sure.
All right, before we move on, John, I want to discuss some Big Ten names and some of the names still uncertain about if they're going to return to college basketball or remain in the NBA draft. So just looking off the top of my head here, Iggy Brazdeikis and Caleb Wesson, Lamar Stevens, Amir Coffey, Isaiah Roby, and Joe Wieskamp. Those are kind of the guys that jump out. Not sure if I missed anyone there, but do you expect any of those guys to be more likely jumping off the page to you to leave or I guess remain in the draft? And on top of that, which departure or two do you think would alter the Big Ten landscape most if they leave heading into next season?
Well, let's talk about some of the ones you just mentioned. Let's go one by one. Obviously, Michigan is going to be an outstanding team as long as John Beilein is the head coach. We know that. But if you throw in the loss of Iggy Brazdeikis along with Jordan Poole and Charles Matthews, I don't care who the coach is, you're going to take a little bit of a hit. Now, I'm still going to have Michigan ranked in my top 25 because John Beilein's the head coach, but that would be a significant loss. I'm expecting Joe Wieskamp to come back for Iowa, and, Isaiah Roby, to me, sounds like a guy who, has the potential based on what we're seeing right now at the NBA level. And, I don't watch a great deal of NBA during the college basketball season. So I do, however, pay attention to the NBA during the playoffs just because I'm preparing to cover the NBA draft and I want to get a better feel. Isaiah Roby is the type of player that in a workout type setting could shine and intrigue a team because of his ability to face the basket and stretch the defense. So I'm looking at those three guys as obviously three different entities, obviously, but I think Wieskamp right now, to me, is the most interesting of obviously the guys that are still potentially going to, come back to school because, I think Isaiah Roby in Nebraska's mind under Fred Hoiberg is kind of like icing on the cake. They're building a roster without him. They just took a stretch 4 from Seattle as a grad transfer. If they get him back, great. If not, they're fine. And I think in Michigan's case, obviously you want to be prepared to move on and keep things afloat. If Iggy Brazdeikis does leave, it'll be a big loss, obviously, for Michigan. But as long as John Beilein's the coach, they're going to be an NCAA tournament team. To me, Iowa is the team that I think is really, really fascinating to track entering next season because we know that Tyler Cook has, pretty much come out and said that, he's going to be a professional from here on out. But think about it for a sec, Alex. You have a team that took Tennessee to the brink in the round of 32. Everybody essentially of significance is back except for Tyler Cook. And Fran McCaffrey was really in a lot of ways prepared for the loss of Cook because he redshirted Cordell Pencil and also redshirted Jack Nungy. So there's reinforcements on the way for Iowa. So to me, if they get, Wieskamp back and you add him with Bohannon and Moss and obviously Luka Garza, and you plug in that 4 spot with one of the guys I just mentioned, you're going to have, for all intents and purposes, one of the more potent offensive lineups in the Big Ten.
Yeah, agreed. And talking transfers now, it's unique in this offseason because we have a pair of brothers, the Hauser brothers from Marquette, who you reported are visiting 3 Big Ten schools, Wisconsin, Iowa, and Michigan State, I believe. Where's that process at? How's that proceeding? And is it as simple as the Big Ten having a 3 and 4 shot, or is Virginia the favorite there?
I texted Joey Hauser this morning. We went back and forth a little bit. He just told me that they visited Wisconsin, over the weekend, and that was essentially it. He gave me the list of schools, which I reported last week. I mean, I think if you look at the way the Hauser brothers play, the ability to go over the top of the defense, the ability to be physical, they look like they're made to play in the Big Ten. But, there's obviously been a lot of chatter, that they were linked to Virginia. So we'll have to wait and see, what transpires in that process. But that, to me, I think was, probably the most interesting transfer dynamic of the offseason so far, because the commitment for those two to transfer happened just days after Marcus Howard announcing that he was going to be in a situation to come back from Marquette. So that was definitely the most unexpected thing I saw hit the wire.
All right, John, we're going to shift gears a little bit. And before we get into your background, which I like to do with sports reporters when they come on, we got to talk about your Twitter game a little. It's kind of become a story in itself, as you've gone along and built your brand on Twitter, especially when you go on podcasts. I heard your background a little bit on Pardon My Take and the One Shining podcast with Titus and Tate. So I want to ask first off about the tweet you start every single day with, the stay hungry, stay humble. Is that more to inspire others or inspire yourself?
It's a combination of both. It's just a daily reminder that, each day is its own separate opportunity and its own separate entity to get better. And I think, one thing that, we always learn, and I think, one thing that you learn, I think, with more life experience and you get a little bit older, is that, the accomplishments and the accolades of previous days, weeks, months, and years, decades, have absolutely no bearing on the future. So that's always kind of a way for me to hit reset each and every day that I wake. And that's kind of the mindset that I try to, adapt each and every day that I live.
All right, I'm a little bit woke on this because I've noticed I was reading through and it's every day at 6 a.m. sharp. So are you tweeting this by hand at 6 a.m. sharp, or are you scheduling these tweets?
Yeah, it's a combination of both. I'm not really much of a sleeper, so I'm an early riser. I like to get things done early in the morning, so it's a combination.
Gotcha. All right, a couple other sayings that are personal favorites of mine. More life-altering than TSA pre-check. That's so accurate because I got that in the last year, and like you said, it is life-altering.
Well, it's just amazing, isn't it? Like you might have a 1:45 flight, and you get to the airport at 12:45, and by 12:52 you're through security. TSA pre-check is indeed life-altering.
And I think it was Duke you called more of a must-watch than Seinfeld in its prime, right? Was that this past year?
This Duke team, I felt, was the most, what's the best word to describe it? Was the most of, magnetic Duke team that I've ever covered in college basketball. There's been so many great Duke teams over the years and so many teams that obviously had a chance to win national championships and did win national championships. But Duke, to me, this year was appointment television each time they took the floor because of Zion Williamson. And I, thought back in my, years, where else would we see the term appointment television used? Well, if you were a child in the 90s like I was, you thought about Thursday nights on NBC with Seinfeld. So this Duke team in 18-19, more of a must-watch than Seinfeld in his prime.
Are you a Curb Your Enthusiasm fan too then?
Not a huge Curb fan. No, just haven't had the time to throw myself into many series because, the last, 15 years or so, I've just been working.
Yeah, well, if you're a Seinfeld fan, I think you'd like it. So if you ever have free 30 minutes or so to kill, flip it on. John, like I alluded to, I want to get into your background a little, and might as well go back as far as your college hoops obsession can go. So just let me know when this, commitment to the sport and when you decided to, really pursue this college basketball career started.
Well, in terms of my overall interest in the sport, that happened on March 23rd, 1991, when Duke played UNLV in the national semifinals and upset UNLV. And obviously, Christian Laettner made the free throws with 12 seconds left. But, when I was coming out of college about 15 years ago, I kind of knew that this was going to be a difficult field to break into, and I kind of went in two directions. I was, a talk show host for a long time and on ESPN Radio in New York for about a half a decade, and I also, freelance covered college basketball for different publications, and I built, a pretty good network in that area. And then I was hired by the MSG Network in 2007, which is a regional television network in New York, to be their college basketball insider. And I was there for 3 years, and then I got an opportunity to go to CBS. And in 2010, I remember I was at a Rutgers practice, and I got a call from my boss at ESPN Radio, and he offered me an opportunity to have my own talk show at the ESPN Radio affiliate in Los Angeles. And I was, humbled and excited about the opportunity, but I had just, kind of broken into the CBS family, and I felt like, with my background and my passion, I'd be able to, climb the ladder a bit, and I wanted to see that thing through. So I opted kind of at that moment to make this my livelihood, and I've put everything I've had, inside of myself into that ever since.
Yeah, your background's interesting to me in particular because you went to Ithaca College and, like you said, worked in New York City and really worked your way up. And I don't consider either of those areas, especially NYC, a big college basketball city necessarily. So how did you stand out and build a brand doing that in that fishbowl?
I didn't think there was anybody in the market that was overwhelmingly passionate about college basketball and wanted to talk about college basketball. People kind of just followed it, obviously, during the NCAA tournament and March Madness. But the fortunate thing for me was New York City at that time was synonymous with the Big East when the Big East was at the apex of college basketball. So I said to myself, if you're working here and you can obviously cultivate great relationships in the Big East and great relationships in the Atlantic 10 and great relationships in the MAC, you can kind of work starting in the Big East and the Northeast and then work outwards nationally. And that's kind of what I started to do. And when I would take trips to other areas of the country, I would make sure that I would go to visit other campuses and connect with other coaching staffs. I remember I had a friend, I think in 2011, get married in San Francisco, and I made sure to fly out early and spend part of a day at Stanford, part of a day at Cal, part of a day at St. Mary's. And then I went out to Los Angeles to visit some friends, and I made sure that I went by UCLA and things like that. And doing things like that allowed me to build my network, and that obviously makes it easier when you're trying to get ahead on stories and trying to get information. So I just tried to adapt that model and keep investing in myself rather than be in a situation where, other people who might have been in their 20s were, spending money to travel or do other things like that. I was pretty, intent on making sure that all my resources were going to be in a situation where they're going to be committed to building my brand in college basketball.
Yeah, and going deeper into those relationships you build over the years, and obviously, so much of your career is built on those connections with people in the industry. I'm just curious, and obviously you don't need to name names here, but are there instances where coaches that you'll try and reach out to just aren't interested in having any sort of coach media back and forth relationship? And if so, how do you handle that and navigate those waters?
Coaches are obviously people, when you're talking about the highest level of college basketball, who are in high demand. They obviously are in high demand with recruits. They're in high demand with the players on their own team. They're in high demand with people who are obviously, associated with their university. So I try not to take anything personally in terms of how much time somebody wants to give you. If I'm obviously in a situation where I'm going to be on your campus or in your area, I hope I get the benefit of the doubt that, I'm going to be able to get some time. But a lot of relationships in college basketball, just like relationships in life, happen organically. So you're not going to be as close with certain coaches as you are with other coaches. But, I think what I've kind of learned is that if you're fair, if you're objective, internally you're doing the right things as a journalist, as a broadcaster, and as a human being. Now, when you tell the truth and you give your opinion, a lot of times coaches aren't going to like that anyway, but that's just part of the job.
How many head coaches' phone numbers would you say you have in your cell phone right now?
I'd have to go and look at the standings and list, but there's quite a bit in there.
Yeah, and I guess if you add assistants in there too, it's probably in the many hundreds. So,
yeah, absolutely.
And one more question about the contents of your phone. How many texts would you estimate you send a day? Because you texted me back almost instantaneously. You mentioned you texted the Hauser brothers this morning. I imagine that number's pretty high too.
Yeah, I would say that I'm probably sending, when I'm working on news and stuff like that, anywhere from 50 to 100 texts before I go to the gym early in the morning. And then, what kind of comes back from that, I work on and kind of move things forward in that direction. So I'd say that's kind of how I start my day. And then, I have a list the night before I go to bed on things I want to follow up on, things I want to touch base on. Then I kind of, make sure I get those messages out or emails out if I'm trying to book, a guest for my podcast. And then get in a situation where I go and, go to the gym, work out. And, sometimes periodically as you're working out, things will come back and you can work on them when you're in the middle of the workout. But that's kind of normally how I start my day very early.
All right, one more question about the way you, I guess, cover and build your college basketball coverage. How are you consuming these games? Do you see most of them in studio, or do you get to many games per year? How does that work?
The great thing about, working at CBS, and, I'm fortunate to be in there a couple times during the week, and then, every Saturday for the most part during the season, and then obviously, a lot of Sundays too, is we have, up to 12 TVs in our newsroom. So on a Saturday, at a 12, 2, or 4 o'clock block, I can have every game that's being played in a major conference on the TV. So what I try to do is, obviously, if I'm not in studio, I'll watch the game at home. I have 2 TVs in my apartment, and then, I obviously have my computer and phone. And then I'll also be in a situation where I'll watch, obviously, a lot of games at the studio. I try to go to games live if I'm not working in New York at the start of the season. And then once conference play kind of comes around, I prefer probably not to be at a game, just to be at home working. And I think you see more sometimes when you're at a game at home and that's the only thing you're focusing on.
I think you said in a previous podcast you've never had a cup of coffee. Is that true?
Never had a cup of coffee, never had a glass of wine, never played golf, and never been to Europe.
So I'll leave the, I guess the last two alone because those are activities, but how do you manage, I guess, all of these organizational duties and manage your energy if you've never had a cup of coffee? And we'll throw the wine in there too. How does that work?
You just learn to manage your time. One of the best decisions I ever made in my life was opting to finish college, a year earlier. And, doing that, required obviously some extra course load and obviously some extra work, but it taught me time management. It taught me self-reliance. Everybody thinks that, when you have a list full of tasks that it's going to be overbearing, but if you continuously are always working on something, tasks are continuously getting done. I once read that, there's a quote, if you want something done, ask a busy person. The more tasks that you have on your plate, the more you're eventually going to get done.
All right, I'm circling back now to some of the catchphrases you use on Twitter and making these Big Ten focused. Because I heard on the Pardon My Take podcast you were on, you told the story behind the death taxes, Matt Painter, and how you kind of switched it from Bo Ryan. So,
yes.
Do you have any other? What are your other Big Ten ones? I'm struggling to think of them off the top of my head, but I know I see them when they pop up every college basketball season.
I think Steve Peichel pounding nails.
Yep, that's a good one.
That's definitely one. I'm trying to think what else I have. Chris Holtman, more meticulous than a forensics officer. That's definitely one. Don't have any from Michigan State. Archie Miller, more locked in than a CPA on April 14th.
There you go.
That's definitely one. Greg Gard, silent assassin.
Yep.
That's definitely one. And then others in the mix. I'm trying to think if I'm missing anything right here. Don't have anything on Penn State. Don't have anything on Northwestern. Don't have anything on Illinois yet. Nothing on Nebraska that could change with Fred Hoiberg. Stay tuned for that, as we get closer and closer to the season. But, yeah, I just think we went through them.
I'm definitely interested to hear what you come up with for those, remaining half of the league. And some of those up-and-coming teams, like you mentioned, Nebraska, maybe Illinois, you'll have to come up with some material heading into next year. So let's talk Big Ten basketball on that note and look ahead. We had, in the Big Ten, 8 NCAA tournament bids this year, Final Four team. Pretty solid year overall. Obviously, that elusive national championship was not to be. But do you think the league will be as deep as it was, just kind of a zoomed-out look at the conference heading into 1920?
Well, you're going to have the consensus favorite to win a national championship in the Big Ten next year in Michigan State. You're also going to have, I think, as long as, Anthony Cowan returns to school from Maryland, a bona fide top 10 or 15, team to start the season in Maryland. I know that obviously they're not going to return Bruno Fernando, but you've got Jalen Smith. You've got, obviously the Mitchell twins coming in. There's a lot to like if you're looking at Maryland. And then you're going to have a John Beilein coach team with its starting point guard back in Xavier Simpson, with Isaiah Livers back, with John Teskey back. Now, if Iggy Brazdeikis comes back on top of that, it's a major, major bonus. But right there, you have three teams that are going to be in the top 25 to start the season. Purdue, as long as Matt Painter is the head coach, is going to be treated and should be treated just like Wisconsin was when Bo Ryan was the head coach, because regardless of personnel, you are going to have a team, a culture, and a program that should be top 25 caliber. And then I really think the team that you need to look at is Iowa. I mean, 4 starters probably back from my 23-win team, guys who sat at the 4 in Pemsel and Nunji. Connor McCaffrey is back. You've got explosive firepower on this team. There's a lot to like for Iowa, so that gives you 5. Ohio State has an outstanding recruiting class. They should get Caleb Wesson back. He's going to go through the process as well. The only reservation I have about Ohio State, and I know they have a great recruiting class, they do not return a starting guard. That worries me just because C.J. Jackson, Keyshawn Woods, gone. Obviously, C.J. Walker, the transfer from Florida State, is going to play a big role. Illinois is a team that made great strides, obviously, last year, beating Maryland at the Garden, beating Michigan State. Ayo Dosunmu is somebody who is going to take a massive jump next year, being an all Big Ten player. He and Trent Frazier give you a lot of pop in the backcourt. Rutgers, had a really strong season under Steve Peichel. And then, the team that, I think is a little bit of a wild card because they lost Romeo Langford and Jawan Morgan is Indiana. Like, they won 19 games last year, but you lose an all Big Ten player and a first-round pick. So I think we've got 5 for sure, top 25 teams that will be in my poll to start the season. And I think Iowa's the team, to me, that's really intriguing when you look at their offensive prowess.
Yeah, Indiana and Minnesota are 2 that, especially if Coffee comes back, I'm curious to see where they land, and talk about Illinois as well. They're the biggest variable for me. I could see them making a huge leap, but they definitely have to make some improvements even despite the strides that they showed in the middle of last season. So before we wrap up, John, you mentioned right off the top Michigan State is likely a national title contender, favorite in the Big Ten. Who outside of the conference are you looking at that is at their level in terms of talent, experience? I'm sure the usual suspects with Duke bringing in a number 1 recruiting class will be up there. Who are some national title contenders outside of the conference next year?
I think if we're going to answer this fairly, we have to wait and see what happens with, the NBA draft situation and obviously the late recruiting process. Obviously, Duke, getting Trey Jones back for another year was monumental. They've got an outstanding recruiting class. They have to be on the list. North Carolina got Cole Anthony, and I know that they've added some pieces, but they also lost a lot from the team last year that lost to Auburn. You look elsewhere around college basketball, we need to see what Kansas does in terms of its, late recruiting. I think getting Udoka Azubuike back will pay major dividends for them. And then as far as, what we're seeing elsewhere, I think if you're looking for teams that are somewhat outside the box of the normal teams you're going to see ranked in the top 10, the Dukes, the Kansases, the Kentuckys, the Michigan States, I think a team that could be really back on the national radar in a major way is Arizona. I mean, think about what they have from a perimeter perspective right now next season. Brandon Williams, Brandon Randolph come back after playing major minutes. You're also going to have, obviously, Nico Mannion and Josh Green as a part of that, core. And you also have Max Hazard, the grad transfer from UC Irvine. So I think Arizona has a chance to play its way back into the national spotlight next year. But there's still some time to, I think, go through what we're going to see from a top 25 perspective, because there's a lot of teams right now that aren't really finished products. I mean, Gonzaga has a team that you would think, should be a top 10 or 15 team. I know for a fact right now the main goal for Gonzaga during the spring was adding a grad transfer point guard. Right now, Gonzaga does not have somebody at the most important position on the floor that they can count on.
Looking at the Final Four from last year, obviously key departures on Auburn, Texas Tech, and Virginia. Do any of those teams take major step backs? And if so, who might be like the next Auburn or Texas Tech, a team that rises up and unexpectedly makes a run? Best you can tell, with even despite the lack of info about who's coming back so far.
Good question. I think the amazing thing about Auburn's run is that they won that Elite Eight game and they against Kentucky, and they took Virginia to the wire. Should have won the game without obviously Chuma Okeke. To me, a team that I'm really looking at is Florida, just because they have a freshman in Scotty Lewis who's going to do a little bit of everything. He's a Swiss Army knife on steroids, and you get back Noah Locke, and you get back Keontae Johnson, and obviously, the hope is to get Andrew Nembhard back. They're also bringing a great point guard in Trey Mann. So I'm really kind of bullish on Florida heading into next year. I think that's a top 25 caliber team. I like Scotty Lewis that much. Other teams to keep in mind as teams that are weren't obviously thought of as second weekend teams, but should be better. Louisville, who brings in a tremendous recruiting class as far as the NBA draft process goes. They're waiting on Jordan Ward to find out if he's going to come back and have another season in college basketball. Dynamic shooter. Chris Mack has told me that he reminds him a lot of Trayvon Blewett. And I think a team that you should look at from the Big 12 is Baylor. Baylor made the NCAA tournament and won a game against Syracuse, despite obviously limited resources. They had massive injuries last season. Tristan Clark didn't obviously have the role he was expected to have because of injury. But you look at the chemical makeup of that team, Jared Butler is going to be back. You're also going to see other experienced players back like Mario Kegler. I think Baylor's a team that, again, a lot of people aren't talking about, but like Louisville, should be in the top 15 to start the season.
All right, John, that's all I got for you. A ton of good stuff. Really appreciate it. It's been a real pleasure having you on. Definitely, everyone out there, check out his work on CBS, Sports Illustrated, and, of course, the College Hoops Today podcast. Once again, really appreciate it.
Thanks, Alex. Appreciate having me, man.
All right, thanks once again to John for joining me. Like I said, really appreciate the time. He is a machine. It's crazy to hear someone like that describe how they work and manage everything. And I just feel like there's a few people in sports media who are just built to do this job in college basketball. Jon Rothstein is definitely one of those people, similar to an Adam Schefter in the NFL, Adrian Wojnarowski in the NBA. These are people who are probably addicted, honestly, to how they cover the sport, and it pains them to miss a scoop, and they heavily prioritize their jobs, and that's why they're so good at it. So it's fascinating for me to talk to someone like that, and once again, appreciate him coming on. All right, moving on now to our Call for the Culture segment with producer Colleen Degnan. Colleen and I talk about a variety of topics, that kind of lighter side of sports and outside of sports, basically about what's going on kind of in the realm of sports, entertainment, and social media today. Definitely a very light segment, so sit back and enjoy it. It's the Call for the Culture segment with Colleen Degnan, and that starts right now. All right, we're back with another episode of Call for the Culture. It's Alex Roux, joined by Colleen Degnan. Colleen, what's up?
Alex, when everyone's listening to this, I'm going to have to ask you, why aren't you wearing any pink today?
Because May Day?
Not because of May Day.
What's the pink occasion?
It's National Mean Girls Day.
National Mean Girls Day is which day? April 30th?
Yeah.
Okay, so today. So in the past, if you're listening to it, when it comes out on Wednesday, I didn't know that on Mean Girls Day you wear pink.
Well, you can't sit with us if you're not wearing pink.
Oh, that makes sense. That's the scene for me. I will say, okay, Mean Girls is an awesome movie. Like, I've seen it a few times, and, even though it might not cater to my demographic necessarily, that's the brilliance of it, because it crosses over to both guys and girls like it.
So, I would say maybe it does. I can't really speak because I didn't go to a co-ed high school, but there's got to be some parallels to, that being a high school situation.
Did I know that?
I went to an all-girl school.
Co-ed high school? What was that like?
I loved it.
Really?
So much.
I can't imagine. I just feel like you miss out on so many social interactions. I mean, it doesn't really seem to hurt you much if you, can interact with me just fine, I guess, but I don't know. I can't imagine going to an all-guys school.
Not totally socially illiterate, I guess. Thanks, Alex. No, but anyways, yes, today is National Mean Girls Day. It came out 15 years ago today.
Some legendary actors and actresses in that. It's Lindsay Lohan, of course, her one of her big films. Who else was in that? Rachel McAdams.
Rachel McAdams, I love her so much.
Tina
Fey, Amy Poehler.
Amy Poehler's in it. Not Don Cheadle. What's the other guy's name? The principal. What's that actor's name?
My gosh, it's on the tip of my tongue.
I don't know. But
yes.
anyway,
and a bunch of others.
Yeah, it's a great cast, great movie. Makes me feel a little bit old that it's 15 years old. I don't know about you, but ages me a little bit. So.
No, doesn't make me feel that old.
All right, well,
still a good one.
I have to fire it up and watch it again soon. It's always one that you can kind of go to the well and know you're going to be in for a good hour and a half, 2 hours or so. What else is new? We're post-NFL draft now. We got the NFL draft in the rearview mirror. I'm very thankful for that because I watched all 7 rounds, all 254 picks, and I'm kind of burned out on the NFL draft at this point. But I know you might have watched it in a different way this past weekend because of the whole split broadcast thing with ESPN.
Yeah, so they had 3 different broadcasts going, and I was going to maybe test out a few of them, but ABC locked me in when they had Taylor Swift open up with Robin Roberts. Like, hello.
See, I didn't see that. I did see on social media that Taylor Swift was part of it. Interesting idea by ESPN to try and kind of get behind the stories and the lifestyle and the lifestyle more of it. Yeah, it was definitely a very ABC broadcast.
Yeah, there was all these human interest angles. They had like Luke Bryan on. It was the College Game Day crew. But yeah, I loved it because like you got to see the top guys. At least I only really watched the whole thing the first night. And so you got to see the best guys and then a little bit about them that you might have not known.
Well, ESPN is known for kind of their mega cast where they'll put different angles on different channels, right? They'll have a certain style of broadcast that kind of runs parallel to the main broadcast, but there was always a part of that never made total sense to me because a lot of it was serving the same audience. In this case, you're serving different audiences because you're kind of trying to draw in the average nightly news viewer that kind of wants the bigger picture. And I think one of the players and Big Ten personalities that crossed over and kind of bridged that threshold was definitely Devin Bush.
Yes.
I know you like the suit.
What are your thoughts on his suit?
So this is like the red carpet where it meets the sports, right?
Yes, exactly.
It was interesting. I really liked his sunglasses, his shades. They were kind of RoboCop looking. And then the suit was like
very
kind of a sling almost.
It was Timothy Chalamet-esque for sure.
And people were like, wait, is he hurt? Is his arm in a sling right now? And I don't know if you saw the Devin Bush video where they brought guys in after, or I think they recorded it before they were drafted, but anyway, they had pre-recorded videos of these players' families kind of saying how proud they were of their sons, of the draft picks, and Devin Bush's video was the one that probably went the most viral because he basically was in this little green room with the headphones on. They showed his family saying their tribute video to him, and then he just broke down in tears throughout most of the video, and it was, I don't know, it was touching.
Oh my gosh, the tears got me. ABC really pulled it.
This is the same guy that tore up the field of Michigan. It's funny just to see this savage on the field.
And he's so confident, so much swag. Yeah. His suit spoke for himself. And the cool thing about it, so obviously it was custom made. I don't think you can just find that anywhere.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
And so the guy who made it, like Greer, I believe is how you say his last name, from Charlotte, a no-name, and ended up kind of in this whirlwind experience. And now he's going to be also designing some suits for the NBA draft. So really cool for him.
Nice.
He's got this little bit nomadic past, and he's still trying to find his way, but I just kind of love that. And I think it's really cool that Devin Bush wanted his suit, and he made one for his dad, Devin Bush Sr.
Cute.
And, yeah.
Noah Fant was another guy who got emotional watching the family videos, and, just cool to see, like you said. But, yeah, like I said, I've had enough of the NFL draft. It's such a big event.
It's long. They made it up to be like a reality show this year, though.
Well, I like how they've done, like we talked about this last week, but how they make it to be just like an event now. It's not just like in a ballroom or in Radio City Music Hall like it used to be. Now it's a whole citywide event. Nashville did a really good job.
The bachelorette parties might have been a little surprised.
That was hilarious. I know. It's made me want to go and visit Nashville a little more after seeing the setup they had there. And you brought up Taylor Swift at the beginning.
Yeah, she's got a new single.
I haven't heard it. How is it?
You haven't heard it? Me?
Maybe I have. I don't know.
It dropped on Friday.
Okay. No, I don't think I have. Is it good?
Okay, so I am a very big Taylor Swift fan, and apparently this is in line. A lot of her other fans have said she always drops a single that's very poppy and airy and not that deep or not like going to be the best one, but it draws people in, and I think that's the consensus. But she has a really cool cameo with a guy from Panic at the Disco in it, and he's really cool.
Panic at the Disco's kind of revived their
I love it.
I guess mainstream relevance a little bit because their High Hope song came out recently. That's a good one. I've been bumping that lately. But yeah, Taylor Swift gets so much, I think, undeserved hate. I don't know why people hate her so much. I know she's kind of dramatic about it's like the relationships. That's why people don't like her, right? But all things considered, she's pretty squeaky clean and a fine role model. Well,
she's just so genuine and really awkward, and she's not that perfect celebrity, which I kind of love. And she's doing her thing. Every album's a little bit different, and she's still thriving at age 30, I believe.
Yeah, I've always been a fan. Still am. So I'll have to check out that single.
Been to multiple concerts of hers, so same.
Shout out. Also in the news, we got to give props to our man on Jeopardy, named James Halser, right?
Yep.
James Halser. Okay.
You said he's an Illinois alum?
Yes, this is a direct connection to our podcast here because not only did he grow up in Naperville, I believe, he's a University of Illinois alum, ILL. You know, we're not the one of the best academic institutions in the country for nothing. You know, we breed and churn out geniuses, apparently. James has honestly been compelling TV. We flipped it on yesterday, and he barely squeaked out a win.
That was high anxiety.
By $18. It was nuts. But he's been attacking the game from a different standpoint. He's using his sports betting background to kind of play the odds a little more, go at the categories from the higher values on down, essentially, right? Because, like, that's been winning him these big totals, and he can afford to risk more money and get more questions wrong. So he's kind of changing the game. He's on Ken Jennings' trail, right, to break his record coming up soon?
I think.
Or did he already?
No, he has not broken it yet.
Okay.
But also funny, and how you always give me a hard time for randomly have connections to things. My friend's distant cousin is the guy that almost beat him yesterday.
Really?
He's an SID
Did you know
at a
that
school in
when we were
Massachusetts.
watching?
No, I think I sent some dumb snap about it, and he got back to me, and I think that's hilarious.
Because we had it on in the office, and honestly, I've never seen a group of people more locked in our little seating area.
That's
than
not a
to
sporting
that.
event.
Yeah, even for sporting events, everyone was like, "Oh, is he gonna blow it?" And shout out.
Well, he's a professional bettor, so this guy probably knows the
Shout
drama.
out the Fighting Illini. Yeah, exactly. He played it perfectly. Go get Ken Jennings' record, James. We're all behind you. Keep it moving. And shout out Alex Trebek as well. Hopefully, he pulsers. He's battling. Doesn't he have pancreatic cancer?
Very true. Very true.
I mean, good to see him still working.
Yeah, he doesn't. It's not holding him up at all.
Can't tell from watching the show. Speaking of TV, moving on. We have to talk about how Game of Thrones is just consuming everything and everybody.
You're just so bitter because you don't understand it.
I mean, just talk about being over something and sick of it. I'm so over this. It's way worse this year as being an outsider than it
ever has been
else.
before.
And I know, I'm going to come off as a hater to anyone who watches Game of Thrones and enjoys it. I'm sure I would enjoy it if I watched it too. I just never came across it, I guess, at the right time or never got the chance to binge it. But I want this podcast to officially be a place of refuge, a home for those like you and I who don't watch Game of Thrones.
Okay, well, I'm an asterisk watcher. You know this.
Because the reason it's taking over my life is every other podcast I listen to is now carving out a chunk of time to talk about the latest episode. I'm I don't.
Okay, well, the relevancy. Okay, I have been watching. You know this. I told you. We've explained this.
No, you've watched, but you stopped watching.
Are you back? I've picked up the last 3 episodes.
But you've missed the last 3 seasons, right?
Correct.
Okay,
That's
so
100%
you stopped
correct.
At season 5.
And I'm not saying I'm not proud of this, but it's just the reality of the situation. But I'm living for it because all these crossover hybrid memes with the Blazers and Arya Stark now, it's incredible. And to actually understand what they're talking about, really, really good for the feed.
So I've got a problem. I just don't understand. This is obviously a huge weekend for cinema and TV and entertainment with Avengers Endgame coming out.
It's out.
Yeah, for this past weekend, I'm saying.
Oh.
And Game of Thrones being a highly anticipated episode.
Huge episode.
Okay, so tell me how there is a whole campaign on social media built around not spoiling the end of Avengers Endgame, and you're basically ostracized like LaShawn McCoy was when he spoiled it on Twitter, and you're just looked at as a huge jerk for spoiling. But everybody just tweets out the ending to every Game of Thrones episode because they're clout chasing and trying to get the hottest meme. Yes,
different. Because I think not everybody and their mom can go see Avengers at the exact time it comes out.
Difference.
And it comes out on HBO at the same time every Sunday. So that's kind of on you.
The difference is that everybody's watching at the same time. I understand that, not everyone's watching Avengers at the same time. But the fact remains that not everybody has seen Game of Thrones that maybe wants to see it someday. And
are you referring to yourself?
Yes, I would like to watch someday, but now
it's been 8 seasons. If you haven't joined, I doubt you're going to.
I know what's going to happen because everyone has to rush to make their meme on Twitter or whatever about who's killed who lately. I could basically recant the whole episode now just because what I've observed on social media and what I've heard on podcasts. So yes, I sound bitter. I sound cranky about it. But you know what? It's frustrating that somehow there's a double standard with spoilers now. The Game of Thrones has kind of crossed over into being the only thing that's acceptable to spoil for everyone on Twitter because everyone assumes that everyone else has seen it.
Well, yeah, everybody would have already seen it if you're truly dedicated to that. But also, it's just a cultural phenomenon to be really cool to be a part of. I'm pretty happy that I'm a haphazard fan.
Okay, one more thing on Game of Thrones that I have to bring up that is concerning me, just as an outsider looking in. It seems like I'm sure the show is truly great, and these episodes are living up to the expectations that everyone is saying. However, I've noticed, especially this past weekend, that people are criticizing the show for certain things, but it does not affect their overall impression of the episode. Like, for example, people were saying how the whole time how dark the scene was, and they couldn't see. If you can't see the episode, how can you possibly enjoy the whole episode?
To preface this, there was maybe 5 words of dialogue for the first 50 minutes of the episode. Yeah. The suspense was just building, heart rate through the roof.
And I'm not somebody who enjoys. I like dialogue in an episode. Like, I was not a huge fan of the movie Mad Max. Like, it was okay, but there was all action, little dialogue. So I don't know, that's an example of
this was just a director's choice. They knew it wasn't going to be the best battle of the whole entire series, but they knew it was going to be the most hyped up.
My question is, could you see what was going on?
You could see enough.
See what I'm saying?
I'm just saying it was the director's choice, and obviously their cinematography experience and the extraordinaire between them is incredible.
Also hearing some criticisms of, plot holes, things not making sense, like how does, this all-powerful Night King throw a javelin a million miles an hour or whatever, but they also can't choke out Arya Stark in one fell swoop, but then she kills him or whatever. So yeah, we're gonna spoil it too on here because everyone.
I love how you prefaced that you didn't want to talk about it, and now you've actually spent a good amount of time on the pod.
Here's my observation from looking from the outside in: when people are willing to look past a show's glaring faults or anything's glaring faults and still blindly say it's awesome. That's a cult, and I think Game of Thrones is building up a cult kind of aura around it that I'm very woke on.
Alex.
And until I see it for myself, I'm going to be this bitter conspiracy theorist that maybe it's not as great as everyone's putting it as, but whatever. I haven't seen it. I'm going to watch someday.
Maybe you could do it like Star Wars, and you'll know the ending, but you're going to just work
that's
backwards.
True. I do I think that's part. That's how it'll have to be. I like Star Wars. So.
And then you could give your takes going backwards.
I'm also going to see Avengers. I don't know about you.
Absolutely not. I have no idea what's going on in that.
I don't either, but I saw the last Infinity War one going in blind. Hadn't seen anything maybe except for Iron Man in 2008
we were young.
Maybe
we were very
whenever
young.
It was. So, and I enjoyed it. I'm not going to be someone who's going into the theater coming out sobbing. I've seen people on Twitter the movie made them cry. It was the best thing ever. But I think I'll be entertained for 3 hours if I go see it. So I'll probably do that once the hype has died down around it, because right now I think we still have the diehards on their 3rd or 4th viewing flooding the theaters. So
showing up in
people
costume.
taking off work to go see it. I know some people here did. Not mentioning any producers by name, but yeah, it was a huge weekend. I know all of April I've pretty much been just this bitter outsider. I wasn't a huge golf fan with the Masters. Game of Thrones has been just one big FOMO experience for me, and Avengers to a degree as well. So I'm just trying to give people a different angle because everybody's on the same page. So
fair, but you are supporting me at least in my Blazers fandom.
I am. Didn't they lose last night?
All right,
I fell asleep.
They lost. But
They're playing the Nuggets.
Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. Jokic is incredible. He is just this giant athletic beast that I really wasn't accounting to bring that much to the table last night.
Interesting thing is, I always got him confused with Nurkic on the Blazers, who now is recovering from
a little bit injured,
broken leg. Yeah,
but to be quite honest, let's be real. The Blazers were off for nearly a week. They're adjusting to the elevation in Denver. It's okay. The Nuggets were just feeling themselves last night. We cannot make free throws. We had 17 turnovers. It wasn't our best showing.
Bit of a letdown game, understandably, after the ultimate high of Dame Lillard's incredible step back buzzer beater. We haven't talked about that yet.
37-footer.
Because remember, we recorded the night before.
And we gave them all the good juju.
Yeah, so we haven't talked about that yet. That was awesome. The waving bye-bye. He completely owned Russell Westbrook on and off the court in that series.
He's just a class act.
Yeah, he owned him with his game. He had the perfect clapbacks at the right times. He didn't say too much. And in the end, Russell Westbrook was exposed, and the Thunder were exposed in that series, and Portland just came out looking much better as a franchise, in my opinion.
There we go. So last night, it was a bit of a shell shock, but Murray was feeling himself. Jokic was doing incredible things, but game 2 is tomorrow night.
It's a long series.
It's going to be fun.
Plus, it's in Denver, right?
It's in Denver. Also,
if you split on the road, you're already coming out of there with the advantage. So that's what you got to hope for.
And fun fact: the last time that they played the Nuggets in the Western Semi-Conference Finals was 1977.
Wow.
And that is the same year they went on to win the whole thing.
It's probably Bill Walton's year, right?
And they didn't have home court advantage then. They don't have it now.
Bill Walton was
yes.
that era. Yeah, that was like the end of his career probably by that point.
So I'm still having great vibes.
All right, well, we'll continue to follow it. We have to talk about one other series in the NBA playoffs with the Warriors and Rockets, kind of the series that's front and center pretty much, being kind of a mini NBA Finals within the Western Conference, just with probably the two best teams right now. And I just have to say, continuing on my rants here, like, after watching Game 1 and kind of observing the Rockets as they've evolved over the years with James Harden and Chris Paul, and like they make the Warriors seem likable. Like, not that the Warriors don't have individually likable guys, but like they're kind of the empire at this point that you want to take down. But like, man, the Rockets with their whining incessantly, and I know the Warriors and other teams do it too, but it's different when they're trying to fundamentally, like, I think especially James Harden, alter the rules, right? Like, they're creating a case where James Harden jumps forward into a defender and basically creates this landing zone where nobody can touch him, and it's kind of an impossible shot to defend, and then complains when he doesn't get a call after he flops and falls. This is the same guy who's basically created a whole new step in the game with his step back that is probably a travel every time. It's like an impossible step back that is 2 steps. It's the same guy who flops when he doesn't get touched. It's on film. We've seen it. So when you flop like that, I'm sorry, like, I don't want to hear him saying that the game is not fair. He came out after game 1 and said, I just want to have a fair chance. Like, come on, James. Like, I'm just sick of in general, every call in the NBA, players whining at everything for a call, crying for a call. And the Rockets are, especially with Chris Paul and James Harden, probably the biggest offenders.
Oh, I completely agree. And you didn't know this, right? When I told you this morning who the ref for Game 2 is going to be?
Scott Foster?
Yeah.
I did know that. I saw that on Twitter. But Scott Foster, if you watch NBA, you've probably seen him. He's the ref with the mean part in his hair.
I definitely
clean
know.
Haircut. And he gives the lowercase technicals to people. Have you seen that?
Yes.
So, like, when he tees people up, he just does the little lowercase t with the one finger on top of the other.
Such a cocky ref, but I kind of love it. But
you need him to bring in and lay down the law.
But the last time that he was an official for the Rockets was in February, and that is when Harden was fined for criticizing him after fouling out.
So it should be interesting on Tuesday night.
But I didn't know that the refs were already predetermined for the first 2 games of the series. So
yeah, I didn't know how that worked either. So that's what you told me that I didn't know.
Yeah, which is interesting. But
like,
it creates more drama around it, and I can't wait.
I don't know if it's just like, if I'm noticing it more, but it just seems like the last few years, like, guys will cry after every call, and it's just unwatchable. Like, I don't know. Like, the Rockets are already hard to watch because they draw so many fouls, right? Like, Harden's going to the line 20, 30 times a game sometimes. I don't know. They're not enjoyable. Like, it's just my preference. I don't enjoy watching them play. Although I will say, friend of the pod, Eric Gordon, he doesn't whine. I don't think I've ever seen him cry to the refs. And, he also came on this podcast, so I'm biased. But he's a guy, just goes about his business. I've never seen him, bark back. Maybe I'm just selectively watching. But anyway, it's going to be interesting because of all the drama. Like, of course, on the other side, you have Draymond, who also cries to the refs a lot and is kind of the instigator and agitator.
I just can't really handle any of the drama coming from the Warriors just because of their elitistness in the NBA.
Yeah. I mean, I've always been on record as saying that Kevin Durant move to Golden State was super lame. Like, I don't care, if the idea is to make the best team possible. Like, it was just kind of lame.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a Curry fan. Anyone kind of stops there.
Like, everyone tries to be pro player and say, these players deserve to do what they want, which is totally true. But, like, as a competitor, I feel like at that level, there's 2 different types of players. There's players that will, join the 73-9 team that just beat them in the playoffs, and there's players that will stay like Dame and try and hold it down for their original franchise. So, and plus, like, KD's probably going to leave after this year anyway. Like,
He's
the
just
Warriors are
chasing
probably
rings.
not the Warriors as we'll know that. Like, this is probably the last year of that franchise as
I
we
love
know
it. Like, that Western dynasty can die.
So we'll see. And after all that disparaging of the Rockets, I still wouldn't mind to see them
Oh, I'm
advance.
100% rooting for the Rockets.
You should.
I would have liked that matchup with the Blazers, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Moving ahead to this weekend, before we wrap up, we have to talk about a great weekend in, honestly, just for events. Like, it's
May's beginning. So first of all, if anyone tries to come at me with the Justin Timberlake, it's gonna be May meme. I just can't. That needs to be done.
Can you explain that meme to me?
Oh my God!
Because it's not a song.
It's from NSYNC. You know who NSYNC is?
Yep.
Okay, so back in the glory days, I'm not going to sing the song, but one of the lines is, "It's gonna be me."
Me, right?
But he says it like May.
That's what I never had clarification on. Like, was he saying me or May?
So saying me sounds like May, and
Okay.
now the memes across every feed still think it's hilarious.
I'm glad you confirmed it. We even have it like as a meme in our office on like the monitors.
I
Have you
can't
seen
handle
that?
it. Yes.
Yeah. So you're not a fan?
I'm so not. I love Justin Timberlake. I hate that meme.
You're here for the Mean Girls memes, but not
Yeah.
for the JT meme.
Which is whatever. But regardless, yes, May's beginning, which means first weekend in May starts. We've got the Kentucky Derby coming up.
On May the 4th, Kentucky Derby and Star Wars Day crossover.
Huge.
So May the 4th be with you on May 4th. I don't know about you, but I try to tune into the Derby when I can.
Well, I just kind of love the obsession with Triple Crown winners. And I know we're coming off of a year where Preakness was a Triple Crown winner last year, right?
Was that his name? The Preakness is one of the races.
No, oh my gosh, what am I talking about? Justify.
Justify.
Justified.
Yeah.
Took home
Preakness-
Triple Crown.
That'd actually be dope if the horse's name was one of the races.
I wouldn't be surprised.
If, like,
the names are...
If a horse named Preakness won the Preakness, or a horse named Belmont won the Belmont, or like how brash would it be if just one of these horses was named Kentucky Derby?
Well, okay, I wrote down some of these names just because I think they're mind-blowingly hilarious. So, like, what if you actually named your horse Win Win Win? Like,
Is that one of them?
that's cocky.
Okay, I would bet that horse.
You would bet that
You
horse.
have to. It's gonna win. Like, how could you not?
No, the number one horse right now, the last time I checked, was Omaha Beach.
Okay, Omaha Beach. It's like a World War II throwback.
We have Roadster.
Eh.
Improbable, which is like a little trippy.
You gotta bet, but improbable is 5-1 odds, so there's like the best odds to win. So it's not really improbable.
True. Maximum security.
So actually, this is kind of a bit. I think last year on Pardon My Take with our sports industry colleagues, Big Cat and PFT. I think Big Cat was.
Sure, they call us colleagues
He was
as well.
yeah. He was listing off like what names you would like have to pick to win, like can't lose or like sure thing, like just goofy horse names that you would look at and be like, oh well, I like their odds to win. I think one was like, you won't pick this one or something like, as a horse name, and I got a kick out of that. And honestly, they wouldn't be that out of place in some of these. Like, Improbable is already one, and Win Win Win. Those are two that almost could be parody names if you wanted.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm just looking at them and trying to figure out which one I'm just going to pick for the sake of picking one.
Most exciting 2 minutes in sports. Are you going to watch this weekend?
I will not be here.
Also, yeah, before we get to your itinerary, what's coming up, we have to talk about the other half of this weekend. Cinco de Mayo.
Huge.
Nice.
I mean, maybe if it doesn't snow, you can actually get outside, enjoy a nice bev.
Yeah, we've. I mean, I think we've Americanized this holiday.
I was
We're
just
not
gonna
really
say
celebrating for what it was truly meant to be, but like, it's probably. I'm sure that won't stop people from
Anybody. When with the
partaking.
crossover with the Derby and the
And it being on a
finals, it's like-
weekend.
there's a lot.
Yeah, so should be a fun weekend. However, like we just alluded to, you will not be in the country even to enjoy it. Colleen, we're gonna have to miss you next week on this podcast, if I'm not mistaken, because you will be
Should I FaceTime me in?
out of the country. Maybe.
Yes, I'm taking a little vacation.
Go on.
I'm going to Europe with some girlfriends.
All right. And what's the itinerary? Let's hear the stops.
We're going to Paris and Nice and Geneva and Berlin.
All right. So the first half of that itinerary, the Paris and Nice. I'm glad you're doing that because.
Yeah, your family's
and we
copying my plans.
Well, we talk in this. We talk in this podcast a lot about travel, and like I want to make it clear, like we don't we don't live like lavish
Really
lifestyles.
luxurious
don't.
lives.
But like we happen to be planning a family trip potentially to Paris and Nice, and I'm leaning on you for the full report, the full review, and we got to figure out.
I'll throw up some vlogs for you and the
do
fam.
some vlogs, do a weekly, what do they call it? Discussion post in college? Remember that you put a discussion post?
Oh my
on?
god.
And that way I can like comment and you can tell me all the must-see attractions in France.
Perfect. You better rate my professor me after, for sure.
I'll do it. That'll be fun, though. Like,
should be a nice little vacation.
It's not quite as fun as podcasting here, but
I'm going to be
nice.
really stressed out not being near. How am I going to tune in to watch my Blazers? It's a really big
concern. Or the Derby
concern.
or anything. I feel like you can stream, can't you, NBA games?
The times are going to be so off. Like 8 hours ahead, so when the game's on at 8,
it'll be like middle of the night.
I'll probably be asleep.
Yeah, maybe you can wake up and catch the fourth quarter or something like that.
You know what? As a true fan, I think I might.
Might as well just watch the whole thing, honestly. Get up.
I'm already an insomniac. Let's just add more to it.
Right. So you're going to Europe.
You're holding out in the fort here?
Yeah, I'm actually, hopefully, we'll see. Don't hold me to this, but going to be in Maryland this weekend, or D.C. or whatever, DMV area. And potentially getting a Maryland basketball player on the podcast for next week. So
teaser.
Yeah, so we'll see. Might have to do an in-person Maryland interview. This is like my way of putting the pressure on our friend Sean Ellenby at Maryland, SID there, to make this happen. Because I'll be in town enjoying, hopefully, the Derby and Cinco de Mayo in our nation's capital this weekend.
Wow.
And then hopefully making it a slice of work, working its way in to get a podcast interview done. But that also reminded me of a meme I saw today that I'd forgotten about from Wedding Crashers. The crab cakes and football. That's what Maryland does. So
you've been saying that all morning long, so I've heard you.
I don't know how I forgot about that or how I've never used it in like terms or context of Maryland football games since I've been here. But you can be sure going into next year that it's going to...
Am I going to see an IG caption from this weekend with that as it?
Maybe. If we get a little 7-on-7 going in the park. You never know. So,
love it.
All right, busy itineraries for both of us. Enjoy Europe. Report back. And when are you coming back? You miss one episode or two?
Just one. I'll be back in like 12 days.
12 days, wow. All right. Enjoy it.
See ya when I see ya.
Any last words before you leave the country?
Rip City.
All right, go Blazers. All right, thanks once again to Colleen and Jon for joining the show. Really appreciate them jumping on. As always, really appreciate everyone listening. And thanks, of course, to my producers, Julie Bronder and Wes White, who produce the show each and every week. And like I said, each and every week, try and get one of these out. And it's no different as we head into spring and kind of a dead period for college sports with summer coming up here. But we'll try and keep cranking these out as often as possible. And we appreciate you continuing to listen. So until then, talk to you soon here on the Take 10 podcast.